You guys, welcome back. Today we are doing the end of the year book tag. This one specifically, I know Destiny Sidewell did last year. I like this one because she had actually asked all of her viewers to ask her questions, and those are the ones she answered. Amanda and I ended up doing that tag last year, and I really loved it, so I wanted to do it again this year. I will go ahead and leave Destiny's original video in the description box along with our Loranda video from last year if you want to watch that. All that being said, there's a bunch of different questions, so let's just go ahead and get into it. I personally love book tags because it's just a time to sit and chat, and I love reflecting on everything that I've read for the year. Number one, we're starting off strong with what was the most disappointing read of 2024. For me personally, I decided to go with Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. I had heard such amazing things before going into this book, and I had really high hopes for this. I think I ended up giving it maybe a 2.5 star. Our main character and her sister's fiance end up getting kidnapped and put into this serial killer's basement. The premise of this book was interesting. I just truly did not like the execution of it. I did appreciate the healing bits we got towards the end of the book, but overall this was just not my cup of tea, and because of that it was a huge disappointment because I thought I was gonna love it. Number two is a little more of a positive question, and it is, what is the underdog book of the year? For me personally, it was Almond by Won Pyong-sun. This did not come out this year, but I read it this year and it was absolutely amazing. In this we follow a boy who has a brain condition that doesn't allow him to feel emotions, so we're trying to just watch him navigate the world. It's hard to say this is an underdog book because it does have amazing reviews already, but I'm gonna say it was an underdog book for me because when it comes to literary fiction, before this book I wasn't too into the genre, but this one really changed my mind. They just articulated so much in such a small book. I still think about this story all the time. This was one of my 5-star reads, and because I wasn't expecting that, it's the underdog book of the year for me. Question number three, we're getting a little saucy again, and it is, what was an overhyped book for 2024? And I unfortunately have to say Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. I know that the second book came out this year as well. I read both this year, but honestly, this series as a whole has been overhyped, at least in my opinion. In this book, we're following two serial killers that kill other serial killers, and there's a romance between them. That sounds completely up my alley, but as I said before, this book just didn't work for me. I think they were trying too hard to do too many things. Even though these two were supposed to be serial killers, I really felt like they lacked a lot of depth. This one though, I know is a fan favorite, so I won't get too into it. It just missed the mark for me, so I think that this book was overhyped. I also read the sequel in hopes that maybe I'll like the trilogy more, but I still didn't love the book. So I'm done with the series, but I will agree that the audiobook is cool because it has two people narrating it. Question number four is, what are your favorite book couples of the year? This one was a little bit hard for me because I didn't read too many contemporary romance books, but a romance that does really stick out to me is the romance that was in The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. You guys already know, especially if you watch the Loranda channel, I pretty much talk about the same 10 books, but this was another one of my 5-star reads of this year. This story just has a little bit of everything. If you ever want to read it, I would recommend going into this story blind, but this romance was very heartwarming and deep, and I still think about it to this day. Question number five is, what is your favorite main character of the year? This one was pretty hard for me as well, but I ended up going with Hades in the Hades series by Tate James. This wasn't necessarily a new character for me because I started this series last year, but I did finish it this year, so I think it counts. This is a dark reverse harem series that's actually a spin-off to the Madison Kate series, which is kind of the same deal. It takes place in the same town, so definitely read the Madison Kate series first, but in this one specifically, Hades is such a memorable character. They just ooze cool and don't take crap from anyone. I miss this universe, so I'm gonna go ahead and say Hades. If you've read this series, let me know your thoughts. I know the Madison Kate one is kind of getting more popular now that it's being traditionally published, so I'm sure we'll see this series starting to get more popular maybe next year. Question number six is a book that surprised you, and mine was Our Crooked Hearts by Melissa Albert. I'm so happy that I ended up reading this book this year because it had been on my physical TBR for so long. This is a YA almost horror book. The reason it surprised me was that it just went a completely different route than I could have ever anticipated. I thought it was so good. This had everything that I want in a spooky type of fall read. I believe I read it in the summer and I had wished that I waited for October. In this we follow a mother and a daughter on two different timelines, and we see how all of the secrets they've kept over the years come back to haunt them. Very unusual and unique story, but absolutely insane and definitely surprised me. Question number 7 is what was a new author you discovered in 2024? I am gonna go with Sally Hepworth. I know she's been around forever, but I hadn't read any of her books until this year. These are always just such easy to read mystery thrillers that have me hooked from start to finish. My favorites so far have been The Soulmate and Darling Girls. Every time I pick up one of her books, I know it's gonna be fast paced and I know I'm gonna be questioning things all the way until the end. So she's an author I've really come to love this year and I can't wait to read more of her in the new year. Number 8 is what was the happiest book you've read this year, and I have trouble with this question every single year because I just don't read traditionally happy books. But a recent book that I've read that made me feel happy is Dear Dolly by Dolly Alderton. This, as it says on the front, is just collected wisdom. She's responding to people's questions about life and dating and friendships, and everything in here I found so fascinating. I was underlining everything, I was highlighting things. There's so many great life lessons and quotes that I always feel inspired by. So Dolly Alderton just always brings a smile to my face. She feels like the aunt you go to for any type of advice you need, but this one made me really happy. So I'm gonna go with this one. I know it's not a fiction story that was necessarily happy, but this one brought me joy. Number 9 is what was the most frustrating book you read in 2023? For this one, you guys have probably already guessed it. It was Jade City by Fonda Lee. While I understand why this is so loved, I just had a lot of trouble immersing myself into this story. And the fact that I wasn't loving it as much as a lot of other people do, that is what was frustrating to me. It was a 5-star prediction of mine. I think I gave it 3 stars. I think I just had a hard time with the storytelling. I wasn't really invested at all until maybe halfway through. And even when I got to the end of the book, I in no way wanted to immediately pick up book 2. So that's really sad. I can see why this universe a lot of people love though. Question number 10 is what was the best adaptation of the year? There was actually a lot that came out this year. The Uglies movie came out. I watched it. I thought it was okay. I think I watched The Last Thing He Told Me, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but I don't think any of them super impressed me. I might cheat and say the Wicked movie because technically that was a book even though the adaptation was based off the Broadway musical. In terms of an adaptation, I do think the movie was such a good adaptation of the Broadway show, but I do think that's kind of cheating. So if I had to pick a book to movie adaptation that I watched, I guess I'll say A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. It's not that it wasn't good, it just didn't pack the same punch that I think the books did. I remember being on the edge of my seat while I was reading the book, and the show kind of feels a little more lighthearted, which I'm fine with, but even the huge reveals didn't feel that crazy when watching the show. So I did like the cast. I'm interested to see if they're gonna make a second season, but to be fair, I really didn't watch too many adaptations this year. Question number 11 is what was the longest book you read this year? I know it has to be one of the Zodiac Academy books just because they took me months and the text in these books are so tiny. On Goodreads, it says that this book was the longest book with 1,009 pages, but in the paperback, at least in the copy I have, it says 761. I think the newly published ones have better formatting, so I'm sure that it is 1,009 pages, but regardless, this was the longest story, longest books that I've read this year. I have love for this series, but I do think they kind of dragged it out towards the end, so much so that after book 7, I had a really hard time wanting to pick up book 8 and 9, but I am glad I finished the series. I do love the characters, I love the story, I just don't think it needed to be as long as they made it. Opposite of that question, what was the shortest book you read this year? I don't even know if short stories count, but this is like a physical book I own, so I'm gonna go with this one, and this is Galatea by Madeline Miller. This was just a short story about Galatea. I thought this was Here's the thing with Madeline Miller. I'm gonna read anything that she writes. If this was a full-length novel, I would have loved it and probably given it 5 stars. This was only 56 pages. And I mean, the pages are minuscule. This is how it's almost a paragraph or 2 on each page, so this is less than 56 pages. I needed so much more from her just because I love her writing, so I can't wait for her to drop new work, but this was definitely the shortest book I read this year. Question number 13 is what was your favorite cover of this year? I love this question. There's always so many gorgeous covers. My favorite was the Lady Macbeth cover that came out. Such a beautiful cover. I've heard mixed things about the book itself, so I am interested. I hope that I like it, but this cover was just beautiful. As soon as I saw it, I knew I had to own it. Question number 14 is what is a book you haven't stopped thinking about? This one was such an easy answer for me, and it is Rouge by Mona Awad. Absolutely insane story with the most bizarre, beautiful, mind-bending writing. I'm still chasing the feeling that this book gave me. I would give you a summary, but honestly, just read any piece of her work and you'll understand where I'm coming from. This is definitely going to be in like my top 4 or 5 of the year. I don't think I realized what a masterpiece this was while I was reading it, but I've found nothing like it since. So now I definitely appreciate it more. I cannot wait to read more by her. Question number 15 is, what is the cringiest book you read this year? They're trying to get me in trouble with these questions. I decided to pick Where's Molly by H.D. Carlton because I do think I was physically cringing at some parts of this book. This is like a little spin-off book from the cat and mouse duet, which I know is a huge controversial duet in general, as it should be. In this book, we're following a character that we meet in the duet, and I was so excited to learn more about Molly. When I actually started reading it, I was so disappointed seeing where they were going with this. I don't think a romance was needed. I wanted to learn about Molly and what happened before, during, and after her whole experience in this world. We didn't need this insta-love, insta-lust romance forced upon us. It felt like just an excuse to write smut, and I didn't want to read about Molly and smut. I just really didn't enjoy this one. I was cringing because this guy is kind of random and I don't love the insta-lust type of trope, but I will say the epilogue I do think was worth it just because that ties in this book with the cat and mouse duet. This one was not for me though, and honestly neither was Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. Question number 16 is, what was a unpopular book that you love? I decided to go with Allison Wood's memoir, Being Lolita. It's her memoir about being taken advantage of by her high school teacher. So it is very deep and raw. It's not that I loved the story. It was very sad and heartbreaking to read about, but it is a story I'm glad that I was able to experience. I say that it's unpopular because I think it only has about 8,000 ratings on Goodreads, which is just absolutely crazy because I think that might be the lowest amount of ratings I've ever seen on a book, and this one definitely deserves more attention. So this was an unpopular book that I enjoyed this year. I'm really glad that I'm liking memoirs more and more. Question number 17 is, what was the highest and lowest rated books you read this year on Goodreads, and do you agree? So when I looked it up, my highest read was Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, which is book 2 in the Shepherd King series. This has a 4.43 on Goodreads, and I believe I gave it a 4.5. So yes, I do agree with the rating. This was such a good sequel to One Dark Window. Perfect fantasy duet with romance and really cool magic systems. I know it's popular for its unique magic system. This was one of the fantasies I did read this year though, and I really enjoyed it. And my lowest book according to Goodreads was Death in Her Hands by Otessa Moshfegh. This had a 3.24, and I am gonna agree with that because I think I gave it a 3-star. This just wasn't my favorite book by this author. I do think the story was interesting, but I've liked other books by Otessa more than this one, so I agree with the 3 that it got. Question number 18 was, what were some of your favorite quotes of the year? I always have a tough time with this one, but even though I don't like keep track of it necessarily throughout the year, I know that if I ever see a quote in one of the physical books that I'm reading, I will take a picture of it and most of the time upload it to Bookstagram. So there was a couple that I posted this year, so I'll go ahead and read those. I can never be all the people I want and live all the lives I want. I can never train myself in the skills I want. And why do I want? I want to live and feel all the shades, tones, and variations of mental and physical experience possible in my life. I read Coraline this year and I posted the quote, "For a moment she felt utterly dislocated. She did not know where she was not entirely sure who she was. It is astonishing just how much of what we are can be tied to the beds we wake up in the morning, and it is astonishing how fragile that could be." And then of course, Miss Dolly Alderton had some bangers, and the one I posted is, "Our capacity to be humiliated and humbled by love is evergreen, and there's something wild and extraordinary about that." Those are just a few that I guess stuck out to me because I took pictures of them, but I mean, I just need to do better at keeping track of good quotes that I read. Question number 19 is, what was the book with the most unique concept this year? I went with A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. This is about a man who has just passed away and is sent to hell, but this hell that he's in is a vast library, and the only way to get out is to find the book that contains your life story. Super unique, very fast read. I will say though, this was very much a short story that happens in this universe, if that makes sense. I would have loved the author to have expanded on this world, just because I think there's a lot more we can explore, but I did like this for what it was. It's just not exactly what I was expecting it to be. Definitely the most unique concept though. Question number 20 is, what is a book you read that you would reread? And normally I would say I don't ever really reread, but I actually have an answer for this question, and it is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer. This is a book I think I might have to reread. I think it's necessary, especially if a sequel is coming out. I will 100% have to go back into the story. There's just so much that happens, so many different moving pieces, and now that I've finished and completed it and have a better idea of what's going on, I think I could understand a lot more the second time around. Question number 21 is reading goal reflection and 2025 reading goal. Reading goal reflection, let me go open up Goodreads. This year I did something different. Last year I read 95 books, which is the most I've ever read in my entire life, especially in one year. So this year, in theory, a little secret goal I had for myself was if I read 95 last year, I should definitely be able to read 100 books this year, but I didn't want to set myself up for failure in any way. So instead of setting my goal to 100, I just set my goal to one book. Like as long as I read one book throughout the year, I'll be happy. And I've used the rest of the year to kind of just track rather than trying to meet a specific goal. And I am glad I did that because it was a little bit tougher for me this year to read as many books as I did last year. I was trying not to pressure myself too much. I've read 81 books so far this year, which is a lot less than last year, but also still such a huge accomplishment. Being an avid reader and reading 81, I feel content with that. I am going to try to read a little bit more this month, so once we're at the end of the year, I can reflect on the total amount, but I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I've read a lot of good books this year, and I've been in a slump the past couple of months, but I think for my 2025 reading goal, I'll probably do the same thing and have my goal just be one book and then using the rest of the year to track how much I read. The last question, question number 22, says, after 2024 reading, what are you prioritizing in 2025 reading-wise? Always the same answer, my physical TBR. My physical TBR is embarrassing at this time. It's both of these black shelves, this whole stack against the wall, and like another little tree type of shelf I have in my room. And it's actually a problem. It's embarrassing. It's not cute and funny. I need to read those desperately, especially before buying more books. It's definitely easier said than done, especially when so many new books are coming out every year. You kind of want to stay on top of the trends, and I want to read what everyone else is reading and getting the new books, but I might have to only make an exception for like new releases next year. I shouldn't be buying any books that are already out before finishing my long list of books that I currently own. Overall though, it has been a fantastic reading year. I do plan on doing every book that I've read this year on this channel like I do every year. I don't know if I want to do like a ranking, like ranking every book I read this year, or just kind of go through all of them like I normally do. Let me know if you have a preference in the comments. Amanda and I also are planning a bunch of end of the year type of videos for Loranda. Things like our top favorite books of the year, all of the books we read for the second half of the year, and things like that. So some of these books will keep popping up in these end of the year videos, but I really did have fun completing this tag. I'm so happy I was able to do it. Let me know some of your answers to these questions in the comments yourself. I'll put the questions in the description box so you guys can read them and answer them if you want. But this year has absolutely flown by, and I can't wait to see what next year will bring. That is pretty much it for today's video though. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to Loranda, join our book club if you haven't already. This month we're reading a holiday rom-com type of mystery thriller book. I'm really excited to start it. I will leave that link in the description. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Let me know if you like this setup, seeing my books in the background. It's hard for me to sit over here. I'm currently sitting on my bed. It's just the way that my room setup is crazy, but I feel like you'd rather see my books than me sitting on the couch. Let me know. I also tried to film a eyeliner tutorial today, a daily eyeliner tutorial, and this is what ended up happening. No one asked for this type of tutorial, but that's what ended up happening. Okay, bye.